Hello, fellow grumps. This is Mike back again, and I'm going to do the two films that Bob of the North. Actually, where is North? North is behind me. It's that way. So, hi, Bob. You're way back there someplace. Bob of the North. Bob Harrison assigned me two terrific films I've seen many times before, but I was very happy to watch them again. So, and they're very different from each other too. So he picked two films that he knew I would like. I appreciate that, Bob. Thank you very much. The first one is classic dramatic musical, A Star is Born. And the second one is a classic low budget film noir action film called Gun Crazy. All right, so let's talk about A Star is Born first. Wow, I love this movie so much. Judy Garland, James Mason, we have Charles Bickford, Jack Carson, Tommy Noonan. Um, This is a remake. This is 1954, directed by George Cukor. It was a remake of the 1937 film, dramatic film, wasn't a musical, starring Janet Gaynor and Frederick March. Also, Andy Devine was in it. And that itself was a remake, sort of a remake of an earlier film that I've never seen. It's called What Price Hollywood. I think it starred Constance Bennett. And it followed kind of the same storyline, but I don't know that much about it. I've never seen it. But that's something I need to seek out. What Price Hollywood. Anyway, Judy Garland in 1954, she had been away from films since 1950. She had made a film called Summer Stock, and after that was over, there were some troubles that came along in her life, her personal life, and MGM let her go. So 1950 was the last year that she worked for MGM. So she acquired a new husband and began going out on doing concerts and just becoming a big star all over again in her very late 20s, early 30s, doing the Palace Theater. I mean, she was just a smash hit. She did the London Palladium. She was bigger than ever, really, and she wanted to get back into film. So they went to Warner Brothers and they decided to do a musical remake of A Star is Born, and they got the director George Cukor, who was very well known and respected in Hollywood, and James Mason as her co-star, taking the place of Frederick March. And it is just absolutely one of the best films ever made. Probably the best performance ever by Judy Garland, for a combination of not just the musical performances she did, but also the acting. The dramatic acting was just incredible. And matched perfectly by James Mason, who gives a stellar performance. The movie, it's kind of a troubled production. I don't remember all the backstory, but I think they started filming it in black and white in a normal screen size, and then they decided to do it in color and put it in CinemaScope. So they started all over again. The musical numbers were very, very elaborate. Took a lot of time and a lot of sets and all that. So it was a very expensive film. And when it came out, it was close to 3 hours long. And this version here is 176 minutes long. And I think the original version was a little bit longer than that. So it had an intermission. And Jack Warner, the head of the studio at Warner Brothers, he wasn't very happy about having a movie that could only be shown a certain number of times during an evening, right? So he wanted a shorter film so they could show it more often, because he wanted to make his money back. The studio had put a lot of money in it. Judy Garland, unfortunately, even though she worked her ass off in this film, giving a fantastic performance, somebody described it as probably the greatest one-woman show ever put on by anybody in a film. She started being her difficult self and not being able to work certain days. So the costs were going up. You can understand Jack Warner's frustration, but he decided to take the film back into the studio and have it cut. So he just did a lot of sort of indiscriminate cutting of a lot of scenes, which when it went back into the theaters, the story was a little bit less coherent, a little bit less involving. And he cut out some of the musical numbers as well. So the film, I don't know if it lost money or if it just barely made money, but it didn't make the kind of profits that Jack Warner had wanted. Judy Garland was nominated for Best Actress. I think James Mason was also nominated for Best Actor, but I'm not sure. I can't remember for sure. But Judy didn't win. But it doesn't matter, because the Academy Award is all a bunch of nonsense anyway. But the fact that she gave such a great performance that it's just legendary and eternal, and we will always have it. So eventually, in the 1980s, somebody went to work trying to restore this film, and which they found a lot of footage that was perfectly intact. Musical numbers were put back in. They found little snippets of scenes, on video, and they found other scenes where they only found the audio. So they filled in those gaps by using still photographs from the movie, and they tried to make the story in the linear way that it was originally. So and uh, the the parts where you see the little bits of film and then you see a bunch of photographs instead of actual movement, it's a little bit distracting, but it doesn't really spoil the experience. I think it just adds to it. It kind of adds to the legend, the mystique around the whole movie and what happened to it and all that. But it is such a great film. Judy Garland plays a singer named Esther Blodgett who was trying to make it just as a singer, and she is seen one night she's doing a benefit. A lot of big stars are there, and she has sort of a brief encounter with Norman Maine, a big movie star who is unfortunately an alcoholic and has a lot of erratic behavior and is sort of going into a decline in his career because of his behavior. And they have sort of an encounter at the benefit, and he he wants to find her later on when he's sobered up, and he finds the band that she's working with in another nightclub, and they're just kind of playing and singing, and that's where he hears her sing the beautiful Torch song, "The Man That Got Away." One of the greatest, just one of the greatest songs that a female singer has ever put on record. It's just amazing. Anyway, so he is so impressed with Esther Blodgett that he wants to make her a star. She becomes his project, and he actually makes it work. He takes her to his studio, which is headed by Charles Bickford, and she becomes a major star at the same time when he is declining. And of course, they get married because they're very much in love with each other. They have a great, passionate relationship. But because of his alcoholism and the fact that he is not able to find work anymore, and she is ascending as a star, it's bad for their relationship, and it gets very difficult. So it's very dramatic. It's not a musical comedy. There may be a few funny bits here and there, but this is a dramatic musical, and it's just fantastic. So Judy Garland, something about Judy Garland, she is so intense when she's at her sort of full star power that she's exhausting. She's overwhelming. I can't imagine what it was like for her to actually be her and experience her own intensity all the time. Maybe that's why she was. Maybe that's why she had to take drugs. No, that's a terrible thing to say. I don't know. But this is a fantastic movie. Highly recommended if you haven't seen it. The other versions of A Star is Born are also very good. I like the one with Streisand. I actually like the one with Lady Gaga. It's pretty good. I was quite surprised. This is my number one. So now the next film, Gun Crazy, released early in 1950. Sometimes it's dated as being released in 1949. That's probably when they released it as a preview. Made it United Artists, directed by a guy named Joseph H. Lewis, who had directed other films that you might hear of, like a whole variety of films, horror films, westerns, other film noir. He directed Bela Lugosi and the Invisible Ghost. He directed, one of my favorite film noirs. A few years down the road from this, he directed The Big Combo, which is a great, great film noir. But this is wonderful. John Dahl plays a guy named Bart Terre, who is, from his youth, he has been fascinated with guns and fascinated with shooting guns. He doesn't want to kill anything. You get this big backstory about Bart Terre at the beginning of the film, and the little boy version of Bart Terre is played by Russ Tamblyn, one of his early films, and he plays a little kid who actually is so fascinated with guns that he breaks into a gun store and steals a couple, and gets sent to a reform school. So when he gets out, he's all grown up, and he's actor John Dahl. John Dahl, who had been in The Corn is Green with Bette Davis. He was in Rope the year before with James Stewart, and so he plays Bart Terre. And after he gets out of prison, he goes into the army. He comes home trying to figure out what to do next. And his friends take him to a carnival, a sideshow, where there's a sort of a gun show. This beautiful girl, Annie Laurie Starr, played by Peggy Cummins, who is a British actress, and she's playing a British character, even though her accent is kind of more Americanized than British, but she's supposed to be from London. And she's this very sexy young blonde girl who is doing sharpshooting, right? And she challenges anybody from the audience who thinks that they can beat her to come up, and of course he does, and they have this big foreplay. The commentary calls this whole original encounter between these two people where they're both doing shooting and they're competing, but it's like a sexual foreplay. Anyway, they end up falling in love. It's a big attraction between the two of them. They go off together and they end up getting married. And then because he's not making enough money to make her happy, she suggests that they start robbing stores and robbing banks, which is what they do. So it turns into a Bonnie and Clyde type thing. They're running all over the place, doing absolutely foolish things. They're robbing places in the middle of the day with no disguises. I mean, they're just right out there. There's no rhyme or reason to it. The whole thing has an air of unreality about it from the beginning. But it's such an interesting character study of these two people, because she is a classic femme fatale. She tells Bart right from the beginning, I'm no good. I'm going to try hard to be good, but there are no guarantees. And you look at this woman's face, that she is so hard and so cold all through the film. She's one of these women that she's going to be beautiful for about 5 years, and then her face is going to fall like Mickey Rourke. She's just one of these people that's just going to, it's all going to come in on her. And Bart Terre, played by John Dahl. John Dahl is actually a kind of a weak sort of an actor. He didn't really have the strength of a leading man type, and he plays a perfect character for his talents. He plays a very weak character. She just walks all over him. So he has a lot of trepidation about continuing this lifestyle. He wants to stop, and then finally, he doesn't want to kill anybody. They use the guns just to sort of keep people at bay. But finally, she goes wacko and she kills 2 people during what was supposed to be their final robbery. And he's reading about it in the newspaper in one of their hideouts, and he's getting upset. And he has a great line. Let's see if I can remember it exactly. He said, "Why do 2 people have to die so that we can live without working?" Which it's a very serious line, but it's almost funny in a way, and it's just kind of makes me think of a lot of people who were living in this day and age. But yeah, anyway, it's a great film. Of course, it doesn't end well. I don't know how many of you have not seen this, so I'm not going to talk about how it ends, but it is a very, very cool movie, and considered to be a classic of the film noir genre. Okay, so Gun Crazy. It was remade sometime maybe in the 1990s, I think, with Drew Barrymore. I don't know who else is in it, but I haven't seen that version, but you really need to see this, okay? So thank you, Bob. And I just have 2 more films to watch for my friend Harry Benson. He assigned High Sierra with Bogart, which I love. I've only seen it once, but I'm happy to watch it again. And the original Star Wars A New Hope, which I have not seen since 1977. So that will be interesting. All right, comments are welcome.